Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bruno Buquerque. I'm here with my partner, Walter Cucci. We're ELT in Brazil, and we're here today to continue this course on assessment. And today the focus is on formal and informal assessment. Which ones do you use and why do you use them? I'll see you in a second. Roda a vinheta.
Okay, we are back. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. I'm just gonna say this. I'm just gonna share this with you because I know to our public, it's been like 2 weeks. So they didn't post anything in 2 weeks, but to us, it's been 2 months, three
Yes.
actually, because all the videos had been pre-recorded, and then I left the country for a while. I'm back now. We're back in here. So it's super exciting for us.
And
Oh yeah,
clearly
so.
much older, right?
Well,
No.
I am. Anyway, so we have a little bit of everything that we discussed. We had formative and summative assessment. Then we talked about validity. We talked about reliability. We talked a little bit about backwash, wash back effect. And today, as Bruno just mentioned, we are going to talk about formal and informal, right, Bruno?
Yes.
Yes. Bruno, let's start with what do you say? Formal?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go. Maybe a bit too big. Okay, when you think about formal assessment, and I'm pretty sure that every time we talk about formal assessment, a lot of people are just going to be thinking about testing, about actually sitting down and taking that test is going to be like 2 hours of silence and nobody can talk and that kind of thing. It's usually what we think about. Bruno, what would you say about this one?
It's one form of formal assessment, right?
Yeah.
Tests, quizzes. So formal assessments are those, let's say, those moments that you stop everything you're doing and you get students to perform in a way so that you can assess them, right?
Okay.
So this usually takes the form of a test, a quiz, a dictation, maybe a project, a presentation. But it's a moment that students know that they're being assessed, and they usually have not a warning, but a heads up that this event is coming, right? We usually don't perform a formal assessment unannounced. I think it's too much stress for students. What do you think? Do you see formal assessment as something that it's okay to be unannounced?
I think that, well, if it is formal, students are probably going to be aware. They know that there is some sort of marking involved. They know that there is something to, there's a standard to be met. Usually passing or failing depends on formal assessment. So they should know. And I agree that they should know. They should be aware that they're being tested at that moment. I just think that maybe there are other forms of formal assessment that we could take more advantage of, right? Like a formal assessment could take it could be a speaking test, and it doesn't necessarily need to be like conducted in a way that it's like an interview. Like you're gonna sit over here, you're gonna sit here. I'm your teacher. I'm gonna interview you, or I'm gonna give you a task, and you're gonna do it just you and I, or you and a pair. There are other ways you can do it. I actually think you can do that with a very big group in different ways, right? Would you add something to that? I can't hear you.
Oh yeah. I
Uh-huh.
think it's all right. I had a similar activity a couple days ago with a group of mine. There are 16 students in class, and we are getting ready. It's a project. We're getting ready to visit an English-speaking cafe here in Vila Madalena, São Paulo. And last class, we had our final rehearsal moment,
Yes.
which was a formal assessment moment. So students would perform the dialogues that they have been preparing to perform at the cafe, and then they did it in groups and one group at a time, so everybody could watch them and take notes and then give feedback. And it was a formal assessment moment. We had the criteria on the board. They decided the criteria for the assessment. Was quite interesting to do.
That sounds it sounds like fun. It really
It
sounds
is.
like fun. Yeah. And when are you I'm curious now, when are you going to do that? When are you
Next week.
actually going?
Next week on Tuesday. Yeah.
Well, you make sure you let us know how that went.
All right. Oh no, I
That-
think it's gonna be fine. The students did a very good job in their
Okay.
presentation.
Can I ask you to expand?
confident.
Can I ask you to expand a little more on the way that test was conducted, the way it happened, the way it took place?
Okay. Students knew that the end. Actually, they decided the end product of the project, which is the visit to the cafe. And so we've been preparing to order food at a cafe. We studied countables and uncountables, containers, food vocabulary that's usually found at a cafe, different kinds of coffee, and the function of ordering food and
So
asking for the check and whatever.
you did work on okay, so there was grammar involved. You mentioned the countable and uncountable nouns, plurals, probably some sort of irregular and regular nouns, that kind of thing. And then you probably had some lexes in there because you worked with lexical phrases for ordering food. All right. And did you also evaluate them? Did you also assess their pronunciation when you're doing it?
Yes.
Yes. And here goes something. I don't know if you use that, but I think it helps students if you give them some sort of criteria, like standards that they need to keep or to meet when they're doing that task. Did they know about any criteria, or
we had we also had task achievement, so being able to order, ask for the check, pay, and that was it, right? So task achievement is in this approach of mine, it's the big one. Everything else is a technicality. And the school uses a system of grading 1 to 5. So 5 is exceed expectations and use and perform creatively. 4 is to expectation and not necessarily using it creatively. And then 3, 2, 1 according, right? Going down. Yeah, 1 to 5.
So, yes. So you had they knew about this.
Oh yes.
Right.
We
so,
use this 1 to 5 for everything.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Okay. So that's a little bit about formal assessment. The students knew what they need to do. They knew they were being assessed. They knew that they were getting a grade out of it. And although most types of formal assessment will take the shape of an actual test, and when we talk about that, I would say a discrete item test, some sort of grammar test that they will sit and answer, filling gaps and that kind of thing. But there are other ways you can formally assess students. You can have a spoken examination, such as the one that Bruno had, and that was actually particularly fun. You can have a writing one, and you can give them an essay, and they have 40 an hour, 40 minutes, something, and then they have to write their answers, and that's also formal. And on the other hand, we have informal assessment. And informal assessment could take, you could actually use the same tasks and test the student formally or informally. Bruno, any ideas to that?
I think we should define informal assessment first.
Yeah, great.
Give it a shot. I talked about formal assessment.
Sure.
How do you see informal assessment?
Well, I would say that anything that you use, that you were keeping records on the student's production, it got like you could even use something like continuous assessment. That's usually very informal. The students might not know that they're being assessed. They could actually know that they are, but usually no, they're not really aware. But you are keeping records on their progress, and that information is usually also used to feed back into the course and what they need to keep learning, or something that they didn't really master. Informal assessment is, I would relate it to formative assessment like a lot, because you wouldn't use much of an informal assessment in the end of a course, and therefore they're not really summative. That's at least the way I think of them.
Yeah, I see your point. Negri, that's an interesting connection. Informal assessment being mostly formative, and I feel I have very little to add actually to your definition. I would only say that informal assessment is sometimes done by the teacher unconsciously, right? So sometimes we are, you get to class and you design a lead in that will get students talking about the topic of the session, of the lesson. And then you realize that students kind of know what you're going to teach. So you just have to curb some rough edges, or you realize that students have no clue of what they're going to learn today. So you tailor the lesson based on this activity. And I feel teachers do this all the time. We ask students questions and we look at them, and if they look confused, an experienced teacher will rephrase the question, will change the course of the lesson so that students manage to deal with the topic of the lesson. And some teachers might do this consciously, but I feel that most of informal assessment is also done unconsciously by the teacher.
Unconsciously.
Yeah.
You know, there was something I wanted to add, but this is something that happens a lot when you're doing diagnostic or placement tests. I don't know if you've been through that. I know you've done it, of course, but I mean, you give them, like, it depends on where you're working, but you will give them a writing test, you give them a grammar test, like a discrete item test, and there is probably an interview. And out of all of that, which one of those feel more informal to you? The interview, the writing, the interview, right?
For sure.
It feels much more informal. And when it comes down to placing the student, which of those three tests would actually give you more information on where you're going to place that student?
Yeah, you're right. The interview. That's interesting.
The interview, right? So, and well, it is possible that sometimes you get that strong impression of this person is in the upper intermediate student. I'm going to place this guy in a B2 course, this guy or this girl in the B2 course. And then you look at the grammar or like the use of language, grammar and lexis and other things might be in there. And this tells me that maybe it isn't. Maybe they're not ready for that level. Maybe they would, profit more on a B1 plus course, or the writing isn't as good. But you see, the like informal tests they happen all the time, and I think that this interview is where you get that feeling of something that is subconscious. Right, you're unconsciously measuring students' progress. So when we talk about informal assessment, I think we do it all the time in the classroom. We do it like all the time, right? It's when you're like, you give the students a task. Oh, okay, so you're gonna do a presentation. You choose the topic, and then they present, and then one of the students who you don't think is one of the stronger ones in the group, they nail it. They ace that activity, and you're just blown away, or you're taken aback, and you're like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. Isn't that going to influence the way you're gonna grade that student in the end of the semester? Aren't you gonna remember how well they performed at that task? And that's informal assessment. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because as you grow in experience, you were saying giving diagnostic tests. The interview in a diagnostic test is formal assessment, right? Because it's a diagnostic test.
It is formal assessment,
but
it feels more informal, doesn't it?
Yeah. And the thing is that you get a feeling after a couple years of experience, and you can place students very easily in the levels. You listen to the student talking for 5 minutes, and you're a B1, right?
B1. And usually when you do the other parts of the test, they will
confirm.
They will confirm your what you first thought of that prospect, that shouldn't to be anyway. Well, it's good to be back.
It is.
This is the last video we had for this series, and now we're gonna move on, and you will see new series of videos coming out. I'm not gonna. Should I give them any spoiler,
I
Bruno?
think we should give a small spoiler.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you do the one of them first.
Okay.
You go first.
So we have decided to start a series of videos analyzing course books. We have the course books that we love, and we're definitely going to bring these course books to talk about them with you. But we would also like you to suggest course books to be reviewed. So send us the link for a non-pirate website, so that we can download a sample unit or a sample lesson of a course book that you want us to review in the channel.
And we're gonna be, we're gonna analyze that. We're gonna talk about it. I would just want to clarify to you that the goal of that series is not to criticize materials. We are just gonna be talking about how we would use them, and we are going to talk about the approach that best suits that material. So that's our goal. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Bruno, I think we have a wrap.
We do.
Yes.
See you around. Like, follow, subscribe, share with your friends, parents, grandparents. Send it to everybody, and see you next week.
We appreciate it. Thank you. We'll see you in the next one.
Goodbye.
Bye.